Check, check. All right. Close your little ears. We're calling the meeting to order. And first thing that we do is we're going to say the Pledge of Allegiance and the salute to the New Mexican flag. Okay, next is the agenda. I'm going to ask, please, that we move the two resolutions under action because both of those take little to no time. And there are people here that are billing the district on the clock. And we want to get them back on the road. So we're going to, if it's okay with the other members, that is the coolest thing ever, to please move action item 9 to even before public forum, okay, to make it number 4, so right after superintendent announcements. Is that okay with everybody? Yes. Okay, in that case, is there any other changes to the agenda? Hearing none, need a motion?
I move that we approve the agenda as modified.
Second.
Great. And then all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None. The record also needs to show, please, that Board Member Rudy Garcia is not here this evening and said most likely he won't be able to make any portion of the meeting. And Ms. Lorraine Price is not able to make the meeting as well. So next I'd like to introduce Alma Bejar to do her thing.
Good evening, Superintendent, board members, audience. My name is Alma Bejar. I will be doing the translation services in Spanish. Buenas tardes a todos. Mi nombre es Alma Bejar. Si gustan traducción en español, voy a estar hacia atrás. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bejar. And then next on the agenda is board announcements. Any board announcements? Well, okay. Ms. Noble.
I'm just going to check my calendar, but just to say that the Gonzales School community is going to be saying goodbye to Mr. Lee, the principal, for a very long time at 2:30 p.m. tomorrow at Gonzales. There'll be a little event.
Thank you. That's good to know. He's, boy, it was like more than 20 years of service just at Gonzales, isn't it? Wow, yeah. And then, so that's fantastic. The only announcement I have is it's graduation week. We just went through our graduation ceremonies for the Academy at Letagoite, for Engage, as well as for Early College Opportunity High School. And I mean, it's a moving time. I mean, it's great. It's why we do this, right? So the graduation for ATC is tomorrow at 6. Then Santa Fe High School at Ivanhoe Stadium at 10 o'clock on Thursday. Capitol at 9 o'clock on Friday. If you attend those, plan on taking at least 45 minutes to park and get in to either of those locations. I'm not exaggerating, at least 45 minutes. And wear sunscreen and bring an umbrella because it gets really toasty out there. All right. Any other board announcements? Then the next item on the agenda is the oh, I see. This is under, got it. Is this?
So I'll go ahead and introduce it, and I'll just send it to you.
Okay.
We're very proud of ECO. The New Mexico, they've won a state championship, Skills USA Champions. The New Mexico State Skills USA Competition Conference was held on April 12th to 14th in Albuquerque. ECO students competed in auto collision, refinishing, technology, and welding. And Mr. Castillo Carrillo will be giving these awards.
Great. And then who's here? Is Jeff here? You're going to take some pictures tonight too? Because we love pictures. Okay. So I'm going to call you out first. And if you want to then just come forward. Actually, I'm going to do this from the podium.
It tells you which we've got the gold and stuff.
Yeah.
I think they're just going to do them all at one time. I think he's going to call them all up and they'll take one big picture.
All righty then. Forgot my glasses. There's going to come a time when you're going to need drugstore glasses also, right? The day comes. Okay. We're very proud to hand out these awards this evening. And the first, bringing home the gold, we have Jacob Ortega in Auto Collision and Refinishing Technologies, and Joseph Thigpen in Welding Technologies. And if both of you would come up. I'm going to introduce the others and then we'll pick one big. Is that okay with you guys? And then if you want individual pictures with the superintendent, she always loves that. Right? Bringing home the silver, we have Thomas Shea in Auto Collision and Refinishing Technologies. Thomas. You're very welcome. And then bringing home the bronze, we have Jackson Sparks in Welding Technologies. And then as well, placing fourth, Ashley Mena in Auto Collision and Refinishing Technologies. And I was telling Chris that I have a car that the transmission is just, you know, when a car gets to be 240,000 miles, doesn't matter how great the rest of it is, you don't rebuild the tranny. So I'm going to give it to Chris in the shop. You guys can wreck it, drive it into a wall, do whatever, and then fix it. Take apart the engine, but I'm sure these folks will be doing some of that work. So thank you, Chris, for all that you do.
Do you mind if I do the rest then? I'm going to finish it then, because there's more.
Before you go, I want to say something. And since we don't have a musical performance tonight, basically Chris told me earlier that all of you guys were willing to come up and sing for us and entertain us. Is that right, or no? That's not right? Okay. Superintendent.
They're also taking this talented group to Louisville, Kentucky to compete in the Skills U.S. National Competition this summer. They will be representing New Mexico, Santa Fe Public Schools, and ECO, and we look forward to you bringing back more medals. Jacob Ortega will compete in auto refinishing technology. Is Jacob here? Raise your hand. And Thomas Shea will compete in auto collision technology. And Joseph Thigpen in welding technology. And Joseph just graduated, right? We just saw him. So we wish you all the best.
Absolutely.
I also want to, just a brief announcement about pre-K and K3+. Santa Fe Public Schools received New Mexico's third largest pre-K grant, $2.3 million, which is a 26% increase over last year. The district will initiate new sites and provide services for approximately 430 students next school year. Also, in K3+, we receive funds in excess of $1.3 million, which is an increase of over $419,000 from the previous year. Funding allows for an increase of 308 students. The district will be able to plan for services for 1,098 students this summer. Dates for the program are June 18th through the 24th. Camp Adventure is the STEAM, Science, Technology, Engineering, Arts, and Math theme for this year's program. The flyer is in your board book on summer programs, includes information on the K-3 sites. Enrollment is already nearing capacity, but congratulations to Deputy Superintendent Linda Sink and also to Dr. Lomax and the team that worked on these grants. Good work. Thank you.
Terrific, thank you. And then this one. And then earlier, for maybe people that just arrived, we changed up the agenda just a little bit, but I promise you it won't keep you here long. We're moving to action, which is item 9. And the first is resolution, consideration of approval of the notice of sale and delegation of authority resolution relating to the Series 2018 $30 million general obligation bond.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. Mr. Halford, our interim CFO, would you please introduce our guest this evening? Do you want to do both of them, or should you do them separately?
You know, let's
do them separately?
we can do them both together.
Art just said do them separately.
Then we can do them separately.
Okay. Oh, either way, okay.
We're going to do them
get 'em up
separately.
All right, go ahead.
Okay. Well, good evening, Superintendent Garcia, Board Member Carrillo, and members of the board. Some of this action should be familiar. Every year for the last several years, we've had the issuance of the Ed Technology Note for $11 million. This year, the GO Bond issuance is $30 million. And the documentation that Eric will be presenting, Eric Harrigan from RBC and Art will then just from Modular are here to give a brief presentation on these, answer any questions you may have as to the necessity of this action, and I'll stand for any questions regarding the finances.
Okay, thanks. And because this has become something of routine, you know, the presentation can be brief, and yeah, I just wanted to let you know that.
President, members of the board, Superintendent Garcia, Eric Harrigan, RBC Capital Markets. I will keep my comments brief. Please feel free to ask me any questions if you have. I will address both of these and then turn it over to Art, and you can take separate action. But as Mr. Halford said, the district is selling $30 million of voter-authorized bonds coming up on June 12th. In addition to that, we'll also be issuing $11 million of education technology notes, also which were voter-authorized. Both of those issuances will continue to maintain the general obligation bond tax rate and the ETN tax rate at its current levels. As I mentioned, the bonds will be sold on June 12th. JP Morgan and RW Baird will be the underwriters and will market the district's bonds directly to investors. The maturity on the education technology notes is 3 years, and the general obligation bonds is 12 years, consistent with how the district has issued its previous bonds. After the sale of the bonds and approval of the ETNs later that evening, bonds would be scheduled to close on June 18th and or July 18th, and that's when funds would be available for the district to expend on the projects. We have a little bit of information on the markets, which I talked to at your last meeting. Not much has changed since the last meeting. And so with that, I will stand for any questions that you have of me and then turn it over to Art Melendres with the Module Law Firm.
Terrific, thank you very much. Questions? Ms. Noble?
Am I correct in remembering that this direct marketing to investors is a different way we did it for the first time the last time?
That is correct. The district sold its bonds last year through negotiated sale, where the underwriters market the bonds directly to investors. Prior to that, the district had sold bonds at a competitive sale. Given the market conditions that we're seeing and the investor demand changing on pretty much a daily basis, Having a negotiated sale with underwriters marketing bonds directly to investors, given the finicky of investors, I think is an appropriate strategy.
And when you say market conditions, is that sort of what you mean, finicky investors?
Well, finicky investors, meaning, sometimes investors are demanding 4% coupons versus 5% coupons. That's changing on a daily basis depending upon what sort of market conditions and future market conditions investors are anticipating.
Ms. Cashman, anything?
No, everything's good with me.
And I don't have any questions as well. Mr. Melendres?
Good evening, Mr. President, board members, superintendent. I will be very brief. The action that you need to take is a motion and a vote to start the process to sell the general obligation bonds in the amount of $30 million. There is a resolution in your packet which has all the required state and federal statements. And with that, I'll stand for questions on the first part.
The only question I have is, in terms of the way both of these are worded as you need them to be, so this will be the motion, this language that's here on the agenda, correct?
Correct.
Just want to make sure I want to do it
The
correctly.
agenda reflects the motion.
Correct. All right. No, I don't have any questions on the other. Ms. Noble?
I think this is probably for the superintendent. How are we doing on spending our money of these bonds, and how much do we end up carrying balances, or do we feel confident that we can do $30 million and $11 million?
I have no doubt, and I'm looking at Ms. Wagner as well as we move through, but go ahead, Mr. Halford.
Superintendent Garcia, Board President Carrillo, Board Member Noble. We are required to spend a certain percent of that within so many years, and we are well within that. I don't have the exact number. We could provide that if you like, but we are not, there's no, everything is going smoothly as far as the spending and in a timely manner.
Thank you.
The only other thing that I would have more for the public is, we are well below our bonding capacity. Is that correct?
Mr. President, that is correct.
Okay, thank you. Any additional questions for Ms.? Okay. Then I will entertain a motion. We'll do them separately. A motion for item 9A, consideration of approval of notice of sale and delegation of authority resolution relating to Series 2018 $30 million general obligations bonds. I'll make that motion. Do I hear a second?
Second?
Any additional discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. 3-0, it passes. The next is resolution considering of approval of the resolution determining the necessity for entering into a lease purchase agreement and note for technology equipment in the amount of $11 million. I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve. A second?
Second it?
And for the notice, since they both said at the same time, why don't you just put Ms. Cashman as the second? And then all those in favor? Any additional discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. 3-0. Thank you, gentlemen, very much for coming up and for the work you do for us.
I have one tiny thing.
No, we're not sending you to La Chosa for dinner.
To the Bahamas? Oh, shoot. I brought up a memo that is in front of all of the board members.
Oh, right.
And my request is that after you give that a quick read, you look at the preliminary official statement. And if you have any comments or errors in the content of the official statement, which is behind the memo, please let the superintendent know, and we'll make sure there are no errors. But it is important that it's your document and you take a quick look and read through. Thank
All right,
you.
thank you very much.
And thank you for moving us up on the agenda. We're
It's
out.
our pleasure. Have a safe drive home.
Thank you.
All right. So that would mean, and this whole meeting kind of breaks from tradition in terms of its order. That would mean that the next item is going to be the presentation, is going to be the abridged presentation of the study of facility conditions, boundary enrollment options relative to Chaparral, E.J. Martinez, Nava, and Turquoise Trail. I want everyone to keep in mind that we say abridged because the original presentation was 94 slides, And I would probably say that that portion of the meeting 2 weeks ago when we did it was over 3 hours. And so the idea here, in doing an abridged version last week, this week, and next week, even though there doesn't seem to be that many folks here tonight, was to really give the public a chance to understand the whys of what decision is coming up on the 29th. And it's really important to understand as well that this information has been presented to the public 12 times. Tonight will be 13. It's been presented to the public 12 times in the last year, in either a forum, either at a school, either in this meeting, at one place or another. So in the interest of transparency, no one can ever come to this district, I think, ever, and say that we're not out there with all the information necessary to make decisions and we're trying to keep the public in the dark. That just simply doesn't happen with this board or with the superintendent or district. And so what we're going to do is have the presentation, and then we're going to go to public forum, and then we'll have board update and just, we already did all that, but then move on with the agenda. All right? All right. So Superintendent?
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. As Mr. Carrillo said, this is an abridged presentation. The full presentation is available online, and the link is on the front page. What this study was commissioned by the board to update what we did last year. It includes Turquoise Trail, which was not included in last year's presentation in terms of facilities and need and where the students are. But it's filled with facts. And one of the things that I want to say is that we fully recognize that when we're talking about changing schools, closing schools, boundaries, it really touches the heart. This isn't about not loving or caring for these schools or the communities or the people in them, or that people love their school. If you go into these facilities, I believe that our district does such a great job of maintaining them. You know, they look great. They really do. What you don't capture is what's going on inside the age of the buildings and whatnot. But I do want to recognize that what you see here, you know, feels somewhat cold, right? It's just the facts. And that's what we were asked to do in terms of this study. But we do recognize that it's painful for people. And I get it. People love their neighborhood school. And I just want to acknowledge that I know it's difficult for everyone. So with that, I'd like to turn this over to our Chief Operations Officer, Ms. Christy Yonda Wagner, and she'll introduce your Director of Facilities and Capital Planning. Thank you.
Good evening, Board President Creel, board members, Superintendent Garcia, Cabinet, and audience. The purpose of our presentation this evening is to capture several years of study, actually, that we initiated in 2016 around facility conditions existing in some of our schools in Santa Fe, but particularly a directive given by the Board of Education in January of 2018 to the superintendent to conduct a study. To summarize all the data and information to date surrounding 3 schools and recommend which of the 3, E.J. Martinez, Chaparral, or Nava, to rebuild. The Board of Education also directed the superintendent to study any associated consolidation, possible closure, boundary changes, and recommendations for transitions and closure of remaining schools as a part of that incorporated study. At a subsequent meeting, the Board of Education directed the superintendent to include the study of Turquoise Trail Charter School and their needs, their program needs, in this study to see if perhaps one of the school buildings might be a good fit for Turquoise Trail when their lease is up. We worked on this study with a decision tree in mind for the Board of Education. We sorted out what we thought would be the best order for decision making, and we'll present the material that way this evening. The first decision really put before the Board of Education per their directive to study this topic again is which site should the district keep and rebuild. So our first section of the presentation will focus on that. After that, we'll talk again about the enrollment, assignment area, boundary information, and then the final consideration, the final decision would be which, if any, facility to offer to Turquoise Trail when their lease is up. The study questions utilized were really designed to compare the facilities and the program needs in an apples to apples comparison manner. So we looked at the same data points for every school facility, including information about the building itself, about the occupants of the building, where our students are coming from, the neighborhood surroundings, the topography, acreage. We really looked at factors, you know, along a continuum, and we looked at them at every site that we studied. We also give some preliminary information around what enrollment and assignment areas might look like should the Board of Education choose to act on item 1 in the decision-making tree. And finally, we make a recommendation for which facility is best suited for Turquoise Trail. This slide is simply for orientation purposes to help everyone understand where these schools are in relationship to one another. Nava, Chaparral, and EJ have contiguous boundaries. So they're in neighborhoods adjacent to one another, and they were cited in the 2017 Facility Master Plan as 3 facilities due to age, declining enrollment, and adjacency that should be studied during the 2017 bond cycle to determine how the school district wants to proceed with improvements or consolidation or closure or rebuild of those schools. So this was an issue identified in about 2016 by our planning team, Architectural Research Consultants, who does facility planning across the state of New Mexico. Turquoise Trail Charter School, which is also in our facility master plan for 2017, is located off of Highway 14, and though it is not adjacent to the 3 elementary schools, their lease is up in a couple of years, and they've been notified that we will not be renewing their lease, and so we know they'll be in need of a home for their charter. I'm going to turn over the presentation at this point to our Executive Director of Facilities and Capital Planning, Mr. Gabe Romero, and he will walk you through the study of the 3 facilities in comparison to one another. So we're back at the first part of your decision-making tree. Which school site should the district keep and rebuild?
Thank you. President Carrillo, board members, superintendent, we'd like to walk through this process again so that we can take a look at some of the factors that we are involved in this decision that we're coming to a conclusion, or I guess coming to a recommendation on. So with that, let's look at some of the factors that are involved in this process. It's a little bit small up there, but hopefully I can help walk through some of this. At the very top, we talk about acreage for the school sites. And Chaparral, if you can't see that, is sitting on approximately 27 to 31, depending on whether they use GIS or county records. E.J. Martinez, about 10 records, and Nava acres, and Nava somewhere around 6 acres. So the size of the property is important when we're talking about building consolidating a new site, if that's the purpose that we want to use for a school site, because somewhere between 7 and 10 acres is pretty ideal for having a new site, so that's important to consider. And then further down, we talk about the capacity of the schools and the enrollment of the schools. And when you look at the capacity of the schools, we have to consider that that's just ideal with persons, 4 classrooms, as they're using a functional capacity, a number of classrooms, number of bathrooms, that sort of thing. It really doesn't translate very well when you talk about program capacity, which is you might have a room that is used for special ed and maybe only housing 2 or 3 students, whereas that particular area might generally use 20 to 30 students in that area. So as we look at that, though, we do see kind of a trend of under-enrollment of the space, so we have to be considerate of that. And then further down, it talks about the number of classrooms at each site and whether they're portables on the site. Nava has 3 portables on their sites, which are not ideal, but that's what they use to house some of their programs. And I won't go through each one of them, but it's important to consider one of those factors. Next, we look at a little bit more information that came from our facility master plan. The facility master plan was a large process that's undertaken every 4 years, I believe it is, and we have to look at all our sites and see where they're at, what kind of improvements are needed, capital improvements, so that we can prioritize those. And what they did in this process, a very lengthy process, takes about a year to complete the process, is they applied scores to the different sites. And after looking at that information, the medium, average or median score, I guess you'd say, is about 85% on the scores. And you'll see here that when we're looking at each of these sites, the scoring for those sites is somewhat below that in the middle set of rows that you have there. For Chaparral, 75.5%, E.J. Martinez, 74.8%, and Nava at 67.4%. And what that takes into account, this scoring, is the types of improvements that are needed, whether they're high priority improvements or low priority improvements, what those improvements are, and the general condition of the facility itself. So on the very bottom, not the very bottom, but a little bit further down, we talk about priority at the bottom 3 rows. And when you look at the priority of the improvements, so if the HVAC system is about to give out, that's probably a high priority system because you need an environment to keep students in a temperature where they can learn and be productive. So those types of improvements, if you look there, show, let's see, the least amount of improvements, the area circled by the orange, is about 3.3 million of improvements at Chaparral that are high priority. And then as you move to the right, E.J. Martinez has about 5.1 million, and then 4.8 for Nava. So we looked at that too to determine which schools have the higher priority needs. Also, demographics is something that we look at, and our professionals with our consultants does a lot of this work, and as you can see, and I think we all see this on a daily basis, if you've lived here for any amount of time, there's a large trend of movement to the south, of populations to the south, while in the central part of the city, and to the north, it's generally staying the same if you look at elementary schools' projected enrollment. So here we are where the dotted line is, and then to the right of that dotted line is the projections. So it looks like the south has grown. It may level off some, but it's still continuing to grow, while the other zones are somewhat declining. And then this is illustrated one more time when you look at populations of students over time. Back in 1995, the central part of town, all the blue area on the left side, is where our students, the groups of blue clumps in there is where a majority of our students lived. And then when you move to the right at 2004, you can see where that's shifting just a little bit and moving a little bit to the southwest. And then in 2017, it's very evident that there has been a large shift to the southwest of our school. So each of those dots represents a student or a family with a few students inside the district. Another interesting point is our aging community. The area in the dark red is, well, on the left side is what the current, let me make sure I can see this. Is a population 65 and above in the 2010 census. So that red, dark red area, you can barely see it on the left slide. And then if you move to projected populations on the right side, in 2020 it's projected
all that orange area is going to be, the majority of people in those areas are going to be ages 65 and older. So in those areas, they don't generate a lot of students is what starts to occur. And you have an aging population with fewer students in the area, and you have the shift of population to the south. Go ahead. So we did our analysis. We took into account these factors and several others. Go ahead, Jeff. You know, what sites should we keep if, you know, if we decide that we want to keep one of the sites and do some sort of renovation, rebuild, or something on that site? We have to take into account what's most, the flexibility and the capability of that site to be able to provide future needs. How about long-term value? When you look at value of the property itself, and it depends on where it's located, what's around it, where is it near student populations, those sorts of things. And then what has the least impact on the surrounding neighborhoods? Do you create, by trying to put a large school in an area that wasn't designed for a very large school, how does that impact the community? So we try and take those into consideration. And then of the remaining sites, if we make a selection of one of the sites, which remaining sites has the capability to support other types of needs? One of those needs, as Ms. Wagner talked about earlier, was the use or the reuse of one of the sites by Turquoise Trail Charter Schools. And then again, when we look at that, we have to look at the impact of the community, of what programs we're building into the community in that area, and then the cost to the district. We need to be cognizant of what kind of expenses we're going to incur by changing the use of those facilities or refurbishing. So I know it's a little complicated, but I think this helps quite a bit if we look at it in this manner. What we did was a simple chart comparison side by side, the same categories for each of those, red being the best, yellow being kind of medium, and then read that there are some issues with using that site or the particular with the particular attribute of that site. So starting at the top, I'll go through some of these, and I think you can, hopefully, if you can see clear enough, you can look at the others. First has to do with the size of the campus, and of course Chaparral seems to have a pretty good sized campus that allows a lot of flexibility. And then when you look at the size of the building itself, Chaparral, the reason you see a green square to the left of it is because it's the largest building, and so it has more flexibility than the others. Building configuration, you see yellows all the way across. They take into consideration how the building was designed and the age of the renovations that went into it. You look at functional capacity, we were talking about that a little bit earlier, the numbers, so that you can have a capacity to have larger student populations in Chaparral than the other two. Building age, we looked at those two, and the buildings don't just have the day they were built, but there's renovations that take place over time, and we take that into consideration also. And as we go further down, I'll try not to go through every single one of these, talk about it kind of towards the bottom of the page, the last three rows that you see there, talk about asset value of the property. And you'll see to the left that Chaparral in total is worth about $3.3 million. E.J. Martinez to the right is about 2.4, and then Nava is about the same, 2.4 million. Next. Surrounding land use is also important when we're looking at either trying to repurpose a school or look at for other uses. And again, Chaparral has some good flexibility built into it for that, and also how it impacts the neighborhood with traffic. So Chaparral has the good luck to be right next to Zia Road, which is a major artery through the town. So it won't cause quite the same impact as some of the smaller communities where these other schools are. If you go about the fourth row down, you may not be able to see it, but it talks about students who live in the area. Chaparral happens to have about 242 students that live in the area. while EJ has 188 and Nava has 127. That's probably due to the size of the school. So the smaller schools just have less students in the area. And then there's impacts on students as you go further down. I won't go through those individually. But what I'd like to do is go to the next slide. And when we combine all of these factors together, there's kind of a definite pattern for keeping a site to rebuild or renovate. And it seems like Chaparral seems to be the most favorable, with the most attributes that would be attractive to rebuilding or renovating or doing some sort of investment in that regards. So, if we do make a decision, in regards to which school is the best for rebuilding or renovating, then we have two other schools, and how would we manage the two other schools? So, what are enrollment assigned areas impacts of this decision? So let's look at that. I know for sure those numbers are too hard to make out, and sorry that the copy is not the best, but really what it's saying here on the row that's a little bit colored, it talks about functional capacity of the school, and then it tells by year, if you go to 2019, and 2018, 2019, the first two columns, it shows you what the enrollment currently is. And basically all it's saying is that those three schools are under-enrolled, and as you move further towards the right, they continue to be under-enrolled, is what that slide is telling you. Good. Assuming we were to keep and rebuild Chaparral and repurpose E.J. Martinez and Nava, what happens basically, and I know the chart's a little bit small to read, but what happens is those students will go to schools near their area, and then the remainder will go to Chaparral or to Kearney, where those schools that were under-enrolled will start to reach higher student populations and closer to their capacity. So they're being used in a more efficient manner because we're filling up those schools. So, assuming, again, that there is a decision made to retain Chaparral, and we have two sites left, which would be the most suitable for Turquoise Trail? In our analysis, and remember this is a very abbreviated version of the analysis, there was a lot of work and time that went into these analysis, but I'm trying to give you kind of a quick view so we don't stay here till 10 o'clock like we did the night we did the 97 slide presentation. So if we'll talk about now of the remaining sites, which one would be the most attractive to use, I guess, for a Turquoise Trail Charter School. And we did something of the same analysis as we did before, but really what came out of that is that there's attributes for both of the schools, Nava and E.J. Martinez, but when it comes down to it, Nava is just too small to manage a program the size of Turquoise Trail. So the obvious choice then would be E.J. Martinez to offer that if Turquoise Trail chose to do so. So, assuming that Turquoise Trail chooses to relocate to E.J. Martinez, what's going to happen to the populations? There's some assumptions made that are very reasonable. First thing I guess we should understand is a lot of the students that live in the old Turquoise Trail boundaries, about half of the students there don't go to school there. They weren't selected for that charter school. They have to be bused elsewhere. So if the school was to move and if the Turquoise Trail Charter School was to move, the current school or building there would absorb those students that are living in the area. And some of the students that were part of the charter school, some of them would go to the charter school at their new location, and some would just stay where they're at because it's convenient at the current location that they're at. So some would follow and some would stay. Those that followed Turquoise Trail Charter School to E.J. Martinez would also probably attract people from the surrounding area, and those students would probably be absorbed into that school too. And this is kind of an illustration of what we were talking about before. In the middle area, it talks about only about 50% of the students living in the former Turquoise Trail Elementary School assignment area are afforded the opportunity to attend the charter school. So understand, a charter school gets students from all over the district, and there's a lottery for that, and the process that they go through to get into the charter school. So it takes students from all over the district. So not all the students that live there next to Turquoise Trail go to Turquoise Trail. Some of them we have to bus to other schools, and Amyville being the most likely spot that they would go to. The impact on the areas, if we were to offer Turquoise Trail to use E.J. Martinez as an option. So again, we have the chart that's not too legible, and I apologize for that. But basically it's saying that those students would probably be absorbed into the surrounding schools that they would have gone to anyway, with some boundary adjustments. And we would make better use of the schools that we have by getting them closer to their capacity. And that is the end.
I do want to add that the board had asked for some additional information at the last meeting. It's more data. Those slides are in the back of your presentation, just for your perusal.
Yes.
The additional data is spectacular.
Well, it's thanks to the
And-
staff. Thank you.
Yeah, and it's really great, and I hope we can put it on the website. There's some very striking things about housing building permits and the additional data we have. Perhaps the most striking moment to me is that Rancho Viejo, perhaps true to its name, is building homes that are starting at $200,000, but they're mostly retirees, and the average in Rancho Viejo is just 1.3 students for every 10 homes. That blows my mind.
It's really interesting to see the data, because I think we all have like gut level reactions to certain things that we see, and the data is really helpful. Mr. Gebhardt, can we add those slides somehow to the initial presentation? Thank you.
I took pictures of them all. I think they're so good.
Thank you.
Well, on that point then as well, and I would encourage people to go to the website. I mean, it really makes it clear that birth rate's down, jobs, there is some job growth, but not nearly as much as one would hope. So the information kind of coming together to say the odds of having a bunch of single-family homes with, two or three kids is not great. So planning for that is not necessarily, a good idea for the community. I had not a question, but just it's clear to me, but because I've seen this so many times. Slide 17, because I know that in the audience you can't really see. You might be able to read. Can we go to slide 17? Thank you. The thing that is striking, and one of the reasons why I liked this presentation when they gave it to us weeks ago, is because you see the green, yellow, and red. And so while you might not be able to read the text, you can see where Chaparral has just a great deal of green, E.J. Martinez yellow, and then more red in Nava. So, because as Dr. Garcia said, this is really just fact and numbers-based information. So you're just taking that, evaluating it, and assigning it a color. And it just starts to become clear. If this is all green, and this is more red, and the green is favorable, then that's the direction we should probably choose. And I say that just because it's hard to read the text there. And then on slide 23, when Mr. Romero, let's get water right there if you need. Was talking about Turquoise Trail, there were, I think it was 154 was the number that are at Amyville that are in the old Turquoise Trail boundary. Is that right? Was it 154 or 115?
145.
145.
I'm sorry.
Okay. So you got to figure that automatically that 145 as well are going to go to Turquoise Trail because Amyville's at capacity. We're not taking any people there. We've cut off the lottery there, and kids are now having to go to Pinon. And Pinon's that going to expand. but we have to take then kids from Pinon, and they'll also then end up being able to go to school closer to where they live. So just a little more clarity on that slide. And that's all I have. And the reason we wanted to do this, and I'm not saying we're closing it off in case Ms. Cashman or Ms. Noble has something else to add. The reason we did the presentation before public forum is we wanted to do our best job in addressing concerns before you spoke. So then after you spoke, if we did it the other way around, it's like you would then have all these questions and perhaps some of them have been answered. And that was certainly our hope. So Ms. Noble or Ms. Cashman, do you have additional comments or questions? Ms. Cashman.
Just a comment for the audience or the folks that are watching on the web. You know, what comes up is people say, why these 3 schools? Why did you choose them and not other schools? Well, first of all, those are facilities that have aged, and you know, I know people will come and say, but my facility is pretty nice, and I taught at one of those facilities, and I love it. But, you know, there are things behind the walls, too, not just the cosmetic of how those classrooms look. And so they don't meet the requirements for the type of programs we're looking forwards to building for the 21st century. The other thing, so those are aging facilities at our elementary. The other factor is, if we look at all of our elementary schools, we have too much capacity. We have empty seats. They may not be in the right spots, but we have too much capacity. And as we keep on taking the capacity we have and keep on stretching and stretching it, we may have small classes in a few schools, and I'm a big fan of small classes, but there are many classes that are not small. And we aren't funded that way. And as we keep on stretching that capacity, you know, some people say, well, then my teachers are going to lose their jobs. They're not going to lose their jobs. We have vacancies that we haven't been able to fill for even our present school year, that we use long-term subs to fill those vacancies because there aren't enough people going into the teaching profession. And so probably one of the biggest things for me as a school board member is, if I keep on stretching that capacity, I don't think there's anybody that says our teachers and our staff shouldn't be paid more. But we can't get there if we have to have a principal here, a principal here, a principal, when we already have enough. So I know people are upset, but I have to be honest, you know, while we have some small schools, there are many of our children, especially in the district I represent and the one that Mr. Garcia represent, and we're the south side, our schools are full. And I know it's easy to say, then bus those kids. Keep our small schools here and bus those kids. And as the board has heard me speak multiple times, our kids that live out in Cerrillos and Madrid have continually been bused for many, many years. Every time the schools fill up, it's not fair for that community to constantly have to move their kids. Their parents want to be able to get to those kids as quickly as everyone else. And when you keep on busing those kids all about town, that's not equitable in my view. So those are some of the questions the board is looking at. But I can tell you, it's not an easy decision. We know everyone loves their schools. Everybody wants small schools or small classrooms, but we aren't funded for that as a state. And so we have to work with what we have and do what's best for all of our students, not just a small population. And I know that's hard to hear, but that's the reality that the board has to face, and how best to do it so we make a good education for everyone. And I think one other thing is Superintendent Garcia said This is data, this isn't emotion. And we're not saying that because we're not saying we're going to send you to inferior schools. We're going to send you to, a good school. Do we have work within our school system to do to make all of them even better? Sure. But we're not sending you and saying, we're giving you, we're going to close a school and you're not going to have a good educational opportunity. We want all of our kids to be succeeding.
Thank you, Ms. Cashman. Ms. Cashman points out, she nails it when she says our schools just aren't funded that way in terms of small schools. They don't give us the money to be able to meet our operational costs to have many, many small schools. And I just wrote a note to myself, I mean, how great it would be for the kids that live in Madrid and Cerrillos and Golden, not to have to be on buses, including both trips, 3 hours a day, and but to have a little red schoolhouse in Cerrillos, where there is maybe it's multi-grade. How great would that be for all the people in those villages? But there's no way on earth we could afford that, ever. So there's that thinking, and then while she addressed the capacity relative to seats, right? We have to look at bonding. Earlier, because everyone was here when we issued another $30 million in bonds, right? So the 2017 bond was $100 million. But the facility master plan indicated that we had over $230 million of need, all right, in our district for all of our buildings. But we could only bond for 100, and that was an increase. To keep the taxes the same, we would have had to bond for 75. But we're very, very grateful that the public continually supports our facilities in Santa Fe Public Schools. Now, and this is where we have to think, right? It's 2018. We have to think about 2021, 2022. What are we going to bond for then, and why? And I think it was even in the paper when I said, people would say, "Híjole, what are you, high?" When I said, if we wanted to build or rebuild 3 elementary schools, the public would look at us like we were absolutely crazy to spend an average of $16 million per school, so that's $48 million. Let's say we only have $100 million in the next bond. We've already used up close to 50% of it for 3 elementaries, also close to one another. When we have another elementary on Highway 14, makes no sense whatsoever, especially when we have $230 million of need in the district. So we had to think about that as well. And if you're a homeowner or maybe you own multiple homes in an apartment unit, you have to think about where you're going to get the more bang for your buck on the asset side, right? On the property value side, on what you're going to fix and when you're going to fix it, and is it worth fixing, right? So those are things we have to think about as we're projecting 5 and even 10 years out, because we know decisions that we make now relative to bonding, and if you include what carryover, something that might in the 2017 bond, the project begins maybe at the beginning of 2020. The project ends up being completed in 2022. So we really are projecting out in terms of how we can be the best stewards of all of these funds that the voters have approved for our facilities. And then, Miss, did you have something to? You always say that I never see you down there, but I haven't seen your hand up.
Well,
so
I didn't
I
put
need
my
to see it
hand
up
up.
before I call on you. I want to see that hand. No.
It's micromanagement.
Miss,
I'd just love to hear from the public at some point. We've been on this item 45 minutes now.
Yeah. It's the meetings for them tonight. You're right.
And just the last thing that President Carrillo said, we have high schools and middle schools that are in desperate need of facility work, and they have been patient. I know many of them, and we have a presentation later on tonight. We've said to them, wait, you need to wait. We need to continue to work on our elementaries. Wait, next bond, next bond. I don't know how many bonds, whether I've been as a school board member or as a citizen on the Citizen Review Committee, that we have asked those communities, please wait. We need to take care of our elementary schools. They need those improvements now. We have to address what's happening at our high schools and our middle schools. And so to say we could build 3 more elementary schools is not responsible thing for, or in my opinion, for the board to do.
Alrighty then. So thank you very much for the abridged presentation this week. We'll do one more of these next week. And we are going to move on to public forum. Because of the nature of the meeting, we kind of switched it around. Is there anyone that wanted to sign up for public forum and we had already pulled the list where your name is not on the list? Okay. In that case, Mr. Gephardt, would you please read the rules and start calling the names?
Board President Carrillo, members of the board, Superintendent Garcia, we have 5 individuals signed up for public forum. The public forum ground rules are: please listen and speak with respect. No uncivil conduct will be permitted. Please do not discuss any specific student who is not your own. No sharing of time. Self-monitor and observe the 3-minute time limit. I'll give you a 30-second warning when your time is almost up. Public commentary and dialogue is allowed only during the public forum, not throughout the meeting. Please search for answers on common ground. You may speak on any topic, whether it is on the agenda or not. Your input will be taken into consideration. And finally, please be advised that the board may discuss your issue during the meeting, but by law, the board cannot take action on any items that are not on the agenda. Our 5 speakers tonight are Maya Delmargo, Jim Reisterer, Mary Schruber, Miguel Acosta, and Melissa Jacobs.
If you could all come down 2 at a time, that'd be great.
So Maya Delmargo and Jim Reisterer.
And then just state your name for the record when you begin, please.
Good evening. My name is Maya Delmargo, and I am the parent of 2 boys who attend Nava Elementary. Please wave. President Carrillo, Superintendent Garcia, members of the board, I have heard all of you speak with a lot of passion about equity. And in particular, I've heard Vice President Maureen Cashman speak with a lot of passion about equity in our district and making things more equitable. I applaud your focus on equity, and I applaud your advocacy on behalf of all 13,000 students in the Santa Fe Public Schools district. Now, we all know that these small schools in our town are in an area where most families cannot afford to live. And we also know that the area where most families can afford to live are served by very large schools. This is not equitable. I don't think we can say that we're having an honest conversation about equity if we don't talk about how very different those educational experiences are from one end of town to the other. Now, I need to be absolutely clear that I do not want to see you close any of the downtown schools. I don't want to see you close any schools. I want to hear you guys vote to keep Nava and EJ open. I attended a meeting last year at about this time, and I heard former board member Linda Trujillo say something that really stuck with me. It was probably one of her last meetings as an active board member. She said that she felt closing Nava and EJ would increase inequity in our district. And I agree with her. I believe that closing Nava and EJ is taking away the middle. It's widening the gap between what's happening on one end of town and what's happening on the other end of town. I believe that it is increasing the disparity in educational experiences based on where families live or where they can drive to, where they're willing to drive to. So as you consider your votes and as you continue your work in the district toward equity, I hope you consider what I perceive to be that inequity. And I hope you vote to keep our schools open. Thank you.
Thank you, Maya.
Our next
And thank you for your continued involvement.
Our next speaker, and I apologize for messing up, Reister? Jim Reister.
Thank you. And I would just like to say before I start, I appreciated the presentation. As somebody that's colorblind, EJ and Nava looked fantastic. So your criteria worked for us. Anyway, when I was here at around this time last year, I was unhappy about the prospect of my kid's school potentially being closed. But I understood the economic realities the district and the state were facing, and I appreciated the difficult position the board was in. With the unexpected but very welcome news that the state's economic situation this year was better than projected, the board and the district were given time to consider and develop long-term solutions to the ongoing budget problems. So part of the reason I'm here is to ask, what have the board and the district done with that time to address the issues that came up last year regarding funding? Have the board or the district followed through on their own comments that part of the problem for Santa Fe Public Schools is the fair student funding formula and how it is applied? Has there been follow-up with legislators to see if that formula can be adjusted to get rid of the problems discussed last year? Has there been any follow-up on getting changes made that would allow our property taxes to be used for operating existing schools rather than just building new ones? What about seeking changes that allow fiscally responsible districts to retain and use their hard-earned cash reserves during future budget crises? Because I recall the board saying that these issues should be revisited. And maybe more importantly, is there still time to explore these options before you decide whether or not to close our schools? It seems to me that until the underlying problems with school funding are addressed, closing down the small schools in Santa Fe is a short-term stopgap measure. Once Nava and EJ are shut down or repurposed, what will the district's options be in 5 or 10 years when oil and gas prices are low again and there's another funding crisis? And once all the easy-to-close schools are gone, what will the board do the next time around? What if the only option left is to shut down an A school? I heard many times last year that the problems the district was facing were directly related to who is sitting in the governor's office. Perhaps by this time next year, someone more willing to work with educators on addressing our school funding problems will be in the governor's office. Why is it necessary to vote to shut down schools now when the entire outlook for school funding could potentially change in the next 6 months, especially if the board and the district were to take an active role in seeking those changes? I had hoped for more from the board and the district. I hoped to hear that you were working to find ways to avoid having to shut down schools, not to hear that you're going to close them when there's not a pressing need to do so. I hope to hear that you'd be working with the city to plan a future together that would include both housing and schools in the Midtown area, so that there would be homes where teachers could afford to live and schools to serve those residents. I hope that when I reached out to my board representative over the summer and fall to try and work proactively with the board on finding solutions, that I would get calls back. I certainly did not expect to be here again. So I ask that you please change your focus from closing quality small schools to finding ways to work with the city and the state to change the funding formulas and allow all of our schools to remain open and succeed. Unlike last year, you have some time. Please use it to make real change.
Thank you, Jim.
Our next two speakers are Mary Shrubin and Miguel Acosta.
Good evening. Good evening, Board, Superintendent, and staff. Thank you all for being here. I don't have a kid in this fight, but I do have some questions for you that I think you should address that I did not see addressed in this shortened version. Perhaps they were in the larger version. This is my first take on participating with this. I live in the Rancho Serengo Neighborhood Association. I'm a member of the board. We're about 2 blocks from Nava School, about 6 blocks from Chaparral, and a little bit farther away from EJ Martinez. My questions are this: whether or not the expansion, the development of the Midtown campus and the St. Michael's Overlay District, the population that is anticipated to move in there over the next 5 to 10 years was taken into consideration in your the slides about the population area. And correct me if I'm wrong, Kate, but I thought it was 6,000 units that we needed to add to our rental properties. Yeah. And that assuming that a third of them, I'm being conservative here, have school-aged children, they'll probably be young school-aged children, these 3 schools are going to be the targets for those children in those neighborhoods. They'll also be the targets for any potential teachers that might move into any of those rental units. And so the opportunities for the students, the families, and the teachers to walk or bike to work gets eliminated by this move that you're considering tonight. I noticed when we went to the design presentations for the Midtown campus that 2 of them projected reuse of the Nava school area as housing, one as detached housing, and the other as high-density apartment building housing. So the other consideration that I think you should look at is that the slide that presented the real estate value for Nava School being your least desired to keep campus or most desired to reuse campus, I think that that valuation needs to increase, because if indeed you do abandon that and you do decide to sell it, it's a more prime, pardon me? Oh, thank you. It's a more prime real estate than any of the other two. And it's prime for the Midtown campus because utilities are already available right there for that location. So I think you need to reevaluate that. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mary.
Miguel Acosta, Co-Director, Earth Care. Mr. President, Madam Superintendent, members of the board, I do have some thoughts on this, but I was here for another reason, and I'm sorry I'm interrupting the flow of this conversation because it's very important, and I don't know if I have time to address that. But I'm here to invite you all to a community, the first annual community graduation celebration. I put invitations on the counter in front of you, and everybody's invited. The idea here, and it's being co-sponsored by Earth Care, as well as the city. The mayor is supporting this initiative. The idea is to celebrate local youth and local families and young people of all ages who are doing something to develop themselves, their skills, their education, etc. Because there's been so much focus on celebrating folks from other places, right, and rewarding folks from other places that come to Santa Fe to take advantage of all the great things that we have to offer. It's completely free. It'll be at Zona del Sol on June 21st from 6 to 8 p.m. We're having cakes donated by most of the bakeries in town. So, and this is a place where you'll be able to attend and just enjoy. No, you don't have to make any speeches, but we will recognize the role that the public schools play in the community college and other entities in developing local talent and local youth. So we'd love to have you there. Thank you.
Thank you, Miguel.
Hi again, Board Member Superintendent Garcia, thank you. My name is Melissa Jacobs. Around EJ Martinez, I'm known as Anna's mom, and that's something I cherish very much. Santa Fe is a city known for its history of diversity, culture, and yeah, I said all three, sorry. Closing EJ, a 59-year-old school, contradicts that philosophy of history. I am personally concerned with the school's safety as well as the quality of education that my 9-year-old receives. At EJ, the faculty, parents, and students are all familiar faces. I fear I will not be known as Anna's mom by multiple students in a 500-student school. I respect all the hard work put into the slide presentation, and as most of us realize, numbers can be spun to show what the presenter wants us to see. For example, I looked up on School Digger the ethnicity, excuse my pronunciation, of 3 schools. The first school is Acequia Madre, 61% white, 32% Hispanic. EJ Martinez, 69% Hispanic, 21% white. Piñon Elementary, 80% Hispanic, 15% white. Conclusion is the 1% is in the downtown areas. In the middle is in the middle, and out south is more Hispanic. Here's my conclusion after reviewing the 94-page slide. Chaparral is the best fit for Turquoise Trail if they would want a school. Demographically, it's closer, and it would accommodate all 500 students. If we do not spend the $19 million on rebuilding Chaparral, then that opens up the money for EJ and Nava improvements. Thirdly, Turquoise Trail Elementary may not want EJ Martinez, and your presentation seems to be built on the fact that Turquoise Trail would take over EJ Martinez campus. Thank you so much for your time and the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Melissa.
And that concludes public forum.
Just want to check again if there's anyone, because this is not a normal meeting, that didn't sign up that needs to speak. Okay. Because that's not going to happen at the next meetings, let me tell you. Okay. So I want to thank you very much, those that participated in public forum. We do have a part of the agenda, it's the last item that is, or second to last, that is board discussion, where, because I think all of us took notes, where we may very well discuss those different points that you made. And, but that having been said, the next item on the agenda is board update and follow-up. Does the board have to update the group? Nope. And the next item on the agenda then is item 8, and that is the presentation.
Superintendent update and follow-up.
Oh, I'm so sorry, I don't. Superintendent update and follow-up.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. Summer school programs, 2018 summer programs are occurring on campuses throughout the district. This summer we will be offering K3 Plus, June 18th through July 24th. Again, check our website for locations. AVID Summer Bridge Program for grades 9 through 12, June 4th through June 15th. Summer Enrichment Programs, Hands-on Heritage, Exploring New Mexico's Lands and Cultures for grades 4 through 8, June 18th through July 24th. Scrub Club, Exploring the Health Sciences for grades 4 through 8, June 4 through June 22nd. Music and Arts Summer Camp for grades K through 12, June 4 through June 29th. Native American Summer Enrichment for grades 1 through 7, June 4 through June 29th. Innovate Academy for grades 7 to 9, June 25th through June 29th. 21st Century Community Learning Centers for grades 1 to 6, June 4th through the 29th. Santa Fe Public Schools Partner Program Reading is Magic Camp for grades 3 and 4, July 9th through July 20th and July 23rd through August 3rd. Credit Recovery, Capitol High, Santa Fe High will host Credit Recovery from June 4th through the 29th. There is a flyer in your board books on the district summer programs providing sites, dates, times, and description of programs. And Mr. Gephardt, these are available on the website. So those of you that are watching, or if you have families that want specific information, please direct them to the website. That concludes my update.
I have a question regarding the high school credit recovery. Is that E2020 that's being used?
Yes, but it is. But we have modified the program. There's a lot more teacher involvement, and there is a limit also to how many credits they can earn and how it's paced. So we've eliminated
And how it's, because I know one of our biggest problems was monitoring it, where people were taking pictures of the screens, sending them to friends who were taking tests later. So we've got to handle all that now.
We've really worked to clean that up,
Great.
Which is why we also saw a little bit of a dip in our grad rates.
Right. All right, thank you. So we then are doing the Early College Opportunity Program.
Thank you.
And we had their first graduation. It was the very first class of ECO that graduated today, and that was super exciting.
That was wonderful.
So on with the presentation, Dr. Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. So tonight's a hybrid presentation. I know that the two of you saw it at the CRC, so Ms. Noble will try to move, expeditiously, but please feel free to stop us if there are questions that you may have. So this starts off really with a presentation from the operations side of the house, but we will be filling in on the program side along much in the same manner that we did during the CRC presentation. Tonight, Deputy Superintendent Sink will be introducing ECO staff that will be sharing with you. We wanted you to hear from them what's happening with the program instead of hearing from the suits about what's happening with the program. And also we have some students here tonight as well who are going to be sharing a little bit about their experiences. So if Deputy Superintendent Sink and our Chief Operations Officer would like to share the podium, we'll go ahead and start this presentation. And I'm excited to hear it again. I just love hearing about how this program has progressed this year.
Board President Carrillo, board members, superintendent, cabinet, audience. The operations team, or specifically the construction management team, has worked with early college opportunities in various formats through the last actually 2 school years on what we call ed specs, educational program specifications. And the purpose of these specifications is to glean information around program and program aspirations that drive facility needs, because we always study the program needs in order to plan for our facilities and construction. So our presentation, or our parts of the presentation, are around our findings around the program, the space needed to support the program, and how we might direct that into phase 1 of our facility planning improvements for the 2017 general obligation bond, and how we might phase improvements of the existing campus to build towards a campus that supports the educational needs of early college. So Mr. Romero is going to present a series of slides, and Dr. Garcia will just wait for your cue to jump in with the other presenters that show the process behind educational specifications, and then we have some real-life testimony about the work going on there.
I think, Ms. Wagner, when we presented last time, did we talk about program after this slide, I think? Yes. All right, so right after this one, if we can go ahead, and then there's also a very short video, right, that we have queued up to be able to show you tonight that you haven't seen. So go ahead and finish this slide, Mr. Romero, and then Ms. Sink, if you'll introduce the ECO team.
Thank you once again, President Carrillo, board members, and Superintendent Garcia. Very excited to be talking about this new campus, or I guess rebuilding this campus in a way that really fits some of the pathways you see up here on the board or on the screen. It's pretty exciting because they have 3 programs at least that are there that are doing very well, but we need to modernize the campus a little bit and give the students something that they can really be excited about too. The campus is a little dated. Those 3 pathways seem to be doing very well, and we're talking about some additional pathways that are under consideration currently. So with that, I would like to give that to Ms. Sink to talk about those pathways. Go ahead.
President Carrillo, members of the board, Dr. Garcia. Yes, we have the 3 teachers that came to CRC last week, I think, to present to you some of the things that are going on in each of the academies. And they were so excited that I think all of us were even more excited that we got to see some hands-on and real-life things that are happening at ECO. You hear things all the time, but it was nice to hear from the horse's mouth, if you will, the things that are truly going on in these academies. And as I said, it was very exciting. So you got to see some of the profit of that with the students coming home with awards and being so successful out in the world doing their projects. But tonight I'd like Chris Coriz, Esteban Ortega, and Paul Munziger to come up, if you would. And maybe if you would like Chris to be your spokesperson, but if any of you would like to speak, that is absolutely fine. They have a 2-minute clip for you to see, which I think will not only show some of the things that are happening within the classroom, but it just as important, some of the partnerships that are happening at ECO as well.
And Ms. Sink, I would like them to speak like they did at the last one, where they each shared a little bit about their pathway.
Sure.
I think would be great, and then Chris, you can also wrap it up as well. So do you want to see the video? Would you like us to see the video first, or how would you like us to do this? What would make the most sense?
How about if we do
the president wants to see the video first. Let me get the popcorn.
Yeah. So why don't you guys come sit down here so you don't have to...
So we partnered up with SEMA, which is just a huge opportunity for us and the school and the community. We've just been kind of talking for about a year or so on how we can come up with something new and innovative to help students and just kind of keep the automotive industry rolling.
When you make learning relevant, it does incredible things, and so the Jeep Build is a wonderful opportunity for us to do that. You know, a lot of times in a math class, they sit there and they're like, why am I learning this? And you can actually apply it, and they can actually see it firsthand by doing this Jeep Build.
So we first learned about the project back in the fall, and we were all on board as soon as we learned about it. We wanted to release our new product on something special, but it was really important for us as a company and on a personal note to be able to give back.
It's just an awesome opportunity for us to be working with SEMA and all these different manufacturers to make this happen for us.
There you go.
Were we watching Ferris Bueller with our headphones? Mr. Codice, you want to talk a little bit about SEMA and what's happening in automotive?
Yeah, definitely. First of all, I'd like to thank President Carrillo and superintendents and members of the board for having us out today. Again, we appreciate it. But so at ECO, we got involved with SEMA. We started talking last year, and it's the largest automotive aftermarket organization in the world. We just kind of lucked out. I met a gentleman about 2 years ago that was actually on the board of SEMA, and he came down. Actually met him at a car show that we had 2 years ago for for our program. So he came, checked out the facilities, checked out our programs, and he just loved what he saw. So we started talking on how we can bring in SEMA, to help us out with our program here. So, we came up with this awesome Jeep build. Basically, what we're doing is, SEMA, they donated a Jeep to our, to the school, to our program, and we have all these manufacturers that are, donating high-end parts. This Jeep is going to be probably about a $70,000, $80,000 Jeep when it's completed. So we have all these cool parts that are coming in. Kids just get super excited. We get a box and it's like Christmas. Like, what do we get now? So we open up boxes and $8,000 suspension kits, $7,000 superchargers. It's just a cool opportunity for for the students to see what we're working with and what we have. But the main purpose of this project is to get students involved. SEMA has a whole education department that they're dedicated to, and they know that the auto industry is not going away. So they're putting a lot of time and effort into the education program, and this is the first program that they do with the school. So we're going to be known nationwide. We're actually building a curriculum. Me and Chris and staff are working together, building curriculum around this Jeep build. And what they're going to be doing is, once we're completed with that, they're going to go off to schools throughout the U.S. and other tech schools are going to be applying and trying to get on board with SEMA for the SEMA opportunity for them. So it's just such a great opportunity for for the school, for the community, the students, and it's just the Jeep is coming out awesome. We got a deadline of this week, and we've got about 40 hours of work to do on it, but it's coming along. And this whole program is going to be self-sustained. The goal is to complete the project, sell it. Whatever profit we make comes back to the program. So if we profit $35,000, $40,000, that's going to come back in the program, and next year we build another cool project. And just the opportunity to be working with, with all these different manufacturers, it's incredible. SEMA actually holds a show in Las Vegas every year at the end of October. I've taken students to it the last 3 years, and just the builds that are going on there, the people that they meet, the people that are coming down to Santa Fe from all these different organizations and companies that are donating parts. We've had multiple job opportunities for students to be working at welding fabrication shops, paint shops, mechanic shops. Just the list goes on and on. But it's just such a great opportunity for us.
Chris, would you share the two components of the automotive program, please?
Yeah, so it's the auto collision, refinishing technology, and then auto mechanics technology. Right now I'm teaching both of them, but hopefully we can find another instructor for mechanics, and I can kind of stay doing the collision. But yes, we're doing both those programs. And yeah, it's just a great opportunity to be working with them. And not only that, we're working with a lot of other companies here in town as well. We're help out the community a lot. People are constantly, every week I get 5 or 6 calls, bringing their cars in for basic tune-ups, oil changes, brake jobs, stuff like that. But with this, so with the money we're getting, I'm looking 4, 5, 6 years, down the road. How can we, improve what we have now? How can we get the, teachers involved? How can we get the community involved? How can we get industry leaders and partners involved to help create this, our school, which should be a national model. There's no reason why we can't, build this school to, to be at that level. Any questions?
We might want to hear the other two pathways. And then, Mr. Wade, I don't know if you have the stats with you that you shared at that meeting today, but it was at the meeting, I'm sorry, graduation. But the number of students that graduated with certificates, the ones that graduated with associate's degrees, the ones that are going to 4-year institutions, and those that are going into work, it was really quite impressive. So I don't know if you can do it off the top of your head, but after the other two present the other two pathways, I'd like you to hear that, because Mr. Carrillo would agree. That was impressive, seeing that today.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris.
President Carrillo, members of the board, Superintendent Garcia. I am a Santa Fe Community College employee, and I'm an adjunct at ECO, and I teach the welding program. Welding program is a great career path to get into because it's it's growing at like a 26% growth rate right now, and the average age of the welders in the United States is around 54. So a lot of the old guys are dying off, and there's not enough young kids to replace them. So the pay scale is just climbing like crazy. So if you look at most U.S. products, 50% plus is all involved in some kind of welding, from automotive to little cell phones to anything, all has some part of welding in it. So what I'm trying to teach is to get certificates. So actually tomorrow we have many of our students trying to get certified into welding, so they can actually from my program, get right to work. And our program's growing real well. We have fun every day. You saw that we made this together with our painting program also, but we have ways to make beautiful pieces of art, beautiful frames to cars, to just all of our way around, and trying to teach these kids how to.
And I wanted to interject, one of the movements around assessment for learning and making, project-based learning, this is the best example of it, but the authenticity, genuine learning, but also micro-credentialing. And ECO is way ahead of the game around actual credentialing, not just at the micro level, but actual credentials. And I think it's kind of one of our best hidden secrets that we need to, make people more aware of, although we have limited capacity. I think we'll probably eventually have more demand than we would have capacity to serve. and channel kids into other career pathways. But the experiences and the opportunity for our students to be able to leave with a skill where they can make way more than a living wage, I think is really quite exciting to me, and I think exciting to the students.
Definitely. So, yeah, the biggest thing we try and show is put your cell phone down and get dirty. It pays to get dirty. So,
thank you.
Thank you.
And you want to introduce your partner here?
Paul Motzinger.
Proper etiquette. President Carrillo, members of the board, Superintendent Garcia. My name's Paul Motzinger. I'm also with the Santa Fe Community College. And I was first brought on to teach construction, which also, as we know, is a graying industry and an incredible demand that they're not able to keep up with. Not people off the street, but young people with real skills coming in. In our first class in construction, we give them an NCCR certificate, National Center for Construction Education and Research. They get an OSHA 30 card, a safety card, increases their salary immediately. Also, we put under construction the environmental education. So I'm teaching a solar energy class, one of the biggest growing industries in the country, particularly in New Mexico. Greenhouse management, aquaponics, hydroponics. It's going to be a significant field in agriculture. These are things that students enjoy taking part in. All their hard academic needs incorporated into math and science and other aspects. It makes it much more practical for them. So it's great to see when they get excited like this. So hopefully this will grow. Our capacity for students and teachers would increase so that we can get more people involved. Thank you.
And then were the students, did they want to say something? I know we brought some students here. What was the plan for the kids? Nope. You testify that it's a good program? Yes, thumbs up. And Mr. Wade, and yes, Chris, did you want to say something else? And Mr. Wade, come up, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of talk to you guys a little bit about Skills USA. You know, we always hear about students getting scholarship money for, basketball, football, baseball, whatever sports they're in. But, Skills USA, they're based on, skilled trades. So it's the competition, the national competition, it's huge. It's one of the largest events that they hold in Louisville besides the Derby. But, it's, if any of these students take first, second, or third at that level, it's guaranteed a full ride to any college. There's people out there that are, scouting for the best welders, the best whatever. There's hundreds of, different comps out there. At the state level, Jacob, got a $10,000 scholarship. Thomas got a $10,000 scholarship last year and $5,000 this year. He took second, so he's at $15,000 right now. Ashley better win next year, so she can get that 10 grand. And same thing in Jackson. He got 5 grand, right? Or 1 grand? No, he took third, so 1,000 for third. And then Joseph, same thing. He got like 10 grand there. So it's these kids put in my opinion, or not opinion, it's a fact. They put in more time than than some of these basketball players, baseball players. I know because I'm with them at the shop till 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night sometimes. So they do put in a lot of hard work, and they really deserve in winning these competitions. And we take a lot of pride in our school and our trades, and in our jobs and what we're doing there. So give it up to these guys. Good job, guys.
Super proud of them. Mr. Wade, briefly, if you could go over those stats for Ms. Noble and Ms. Cashman.
Yes. President Carrillo, Superintendent Garcia, and members of the board. Today we were glad to graduate our first graduating class from Early College Opportunities High School. And as Dr. Garcia has stated, we celebrated today, and these are some of the things that we celebrated. I'm trying to put you like you were there, so I'm going to kind of get into Please join me in applauding the following. All students that will be attending Santa Fe Community College, out of our 36 graduates, 30 of them stood. All students that graduated in December of 2017 with a certificate or a degree, 3 of them stood from Santa Fe Community College. All students that graduated in May of 2018 with a certificate or a degree, 2 of them stood, just graduated actually before our graduation. All students that have been accepted into four-year colleges and universities, 6 of them stood. All students that will be attending four-year colleges and universities, 6 of them stood for that. All students that will be joining the workforce immediately after graduation, out of the 36, 32 of them stood because of our middle career opportunities that we have by being connected to the community college. Some of our students choose to leave our pathways and take additional courses at night, so they're really close to getting certificates that they can use towards work as they're continuing on in college. And then I asked all early graduates to stand. We have 5 stand, and Mr. Thigpen is one of them, one of our welders. These are students that took advantage of our 4x4 block scheduling model and took more classes. They were actually members of the graduating class of 2019, but they graduated to move on into college. And last but not least, my phone went dead, hold on. We said all first-generation high school graduates, and we had 6 students to stand. And that was really great. And then we closed out by saying all students that are just absolutely awesome, and all of them stood.
Thank you, Mr. Wade.
Thank you.
You know, it's just, it was very heartwarming and encouraging. And while we have one of our female students here, when I looked at the graduating class, it was pretty much well represented, the young women as well as young men in the program. And all of the faculty and staff, if you just raise your hand so they can see who's here today as part of ECO. So, you know, we've hit some bumps in the road, but they've really come along in moving this school forward. I know we're going to continue to grow. We really want to establish these pathways. We're strong on the academics. The partnership with the community college is strong. And what we're moving towards in exploring is this notion of first responders, but we're not moving to that next year. We really need to plan that pathway and what that would look like. And you'll hear more from the presentation from Ms. Wagner and from Mr. Romero, that the way that the building we're looking at in terms of construction are flexible spaces, so it can adapt to other programming needs. So if you'd like to continue with the presentation now from the facilities perspective.
Thank you, Superintendent Garcia. To continue, that's one of the reasons that you see these projections. I think there's a lot of need, we think there's a lot of need in the community for a program like this that is that model of project-based learning combined with hands-on learning in a facility that actually has the tools and the ability to bring forward this type of program, so that as we look at the numbers that we have today, and we're at 143 students this year, but we do project growth in that as these pathways start to fill. We're also wanting to ensure that we do have the pathways with at least 60 to 75 students, so that we can ensure that the levels are consistent and that the programs remain funded. So in order to prepare for ECO, we've got to do a few things in order to prepare the campus for what our vision is at this point. The Busy Bugs program is a program that was called a Teen Parent Center a while back, but they do serve teens in our high schools that have children and also the community. And they're located now on the south campus of Santa Fe High School. So they're kind of inside the campus. We would like to relocate that program and find them a better location and have them continue to serve our community and our students. The Science Lab building, there's some opportunities there, possibly to refurbish that for the Busy Bugs program. We've been looking at that very closely and working closely with that program to make sure that when we do make that those decisions, that they have a lot of input into what we want to do. There's a district warehouse building there where we currently store a lot of overflow of old furniture and other items. That will be the site where the new building would be erected, so that would have to be leveled and demolished. There's a greenhouse on the site that is somewhat dated, and I think we could do a lot better than what we have there, so that would probably be taken down. And the portables, we have a number of portables on the site that we would like to move out of there. Portables are a good temporary solution, but they're really not a permanent solution, so we'd like to move away from those. So as you see on the overhead view of that, you see the big X demo building on the top right, that's that current warehouse facility that we have. And just to the north of that, you'll see where it says Teen Parent Early Childhood Busy Bugs. That's where that program is directly adjacent to that older building, so it's not a grand spot for that. So any building you see there with the red X through it are the buildings that we want to remove or demolish at this site. Let's see. So anyway, there's a removal with the current entrance would be shifted to the northeast where that demo building is, where we're going to put a new building, and that would be the main entrance, so that would focus people to the front. Right now we come in through the exit that's furthest west on Zia Road. That we would probably like to think about using that for the new location for that early childhood center. So if you see the dotted lines, there's an orange dotted line that goes around the Echo campus, and then there's a yellow dotted line that kind of encloses that early childhood program, which is fantastic because then it's isolated from the school and you don't have to drive inside the school to access that. So from a security standpoint, focusing the entry to the front on the northeast corner of the property and moving the Busy Bug Center down to the southwest seems to work pretty well. Okay, so some of the program needs our site improvements, grading, parking, that sort of thing. We need to renovate that building that I was talking about, the vocational building. Refurbish the wood fabrication building where they're building the tiny houses now is kind of inadequate. We've heard stories where they had to take out a wall so they could get their tiny building out of the area that it was built in, the indoor area. So we want to do a little bit better than that. So I think we can do some good refurbishing or renovations on that area. Also the same with a very successful auto collision program. We want to look at expanding that and construct that new academic building that will be the focus of the campus over there. So this is kind of what I was just talking about and what it would look like. So that blue odd-shaped kind of building, it's just a kind of a vision, is the new facility where we would put a lot of the general programs in and a lot of flexible, usable space, some sort of gym there so that we could properly implement a physical education program, and other types of programs will have some flexibility with the building itself. And then the big white area just down kind of to the southwest of that is Reno Votech building. So that building has served its purpose for many years. I think I'm sure it's been there since the 70s. And it's dated, but it is still a good building that I think we could get some more use out of, but it is going to take some renovation. And then right below that you see the fabrication shop we were talking about, and then on kind of the top left, the other white surrounded by blue is the auto collision building that is going to need some renovation. This is just kind of gives you square footage totals of the site, and they did come up with I guess about 39, almost 40,000 square feet of additional space that we need in order to make the campus functional for the projections of students that we were looking at earlier. And then just this goes kind of into detail about the type of work that we would be doing in each building. In that new building, we want to look at what kind of services we're going to provide the students, and we're looking at labs. We have general education courses, a lot of those. A student commons area, so you need a big area where the students can meet in group. Right now we don't have anything like that on campus, and it's really in need of that general commons area. Also, you want your administrative and support services, security, and stuff like that inside that building. And again, that comes out to that figure of about 39,000 square feet. So what does this cost? We currently have in our general obligation bond 2017, we've dedicated $10 million to this project, and we're starting to move forward with those. But the actual cost, if you'll go to the next is more. I mean, I think in order to do this correctly and to provide the programs and the support for the pathways that we envision, it's going to cost as much or around $18 million. What we can do, I think, is look at that in a couple of phases. Right now we have just about almost enough. We need some more, but we almost have enough for the phase 1, which is going to involve some demolition. I can read it from here a little bit better. Some site improvements, the new academic building, and some work on that. And then once we get that in place, then we can look at phase 2, which is going to be talking about renovations at the auto collision building, the greenhouse, replacing the greenhouse, the wood shop fabrication, and an addition to the auto collision building, amongst other things. So it's a long-term vision. I think we're starting to make some good progress on that. We have some great enthusiasm from the staff and the students here, and I think we're all very excited to begin moving forward with this project.
Before we move to questions, I'd also like to mention that we've entered into a partnership with Future Focused Education. And I think you went on that visit with us when we visited, Ms. Noble did, and did Ms. Cashman, did you go with us? We did take staff, we took community members to visit those 3 charters and those academies. And they're part of a larger network nationally that really look at how do we engage the community in our project-based learning, and they're already doing it. You know, when we talk about the tiny houses and how they have connected with the building trades in our community, the same with SEMA, but actually, I think that's what's exciting for students, when you're not just doing a project to do a project, but it actually is tied to real businesses and solving real problems. That, you know, makes it authentic and exciting. And so we're going to be getting more technical support and assistance and working with staff in that regard as we move forward. So we're excited about that new partnership that we're entering into, and more to come on that.
Slide 3, please. What are the 2 additional pathways you're all that are under consideration, or that you're just floating?
So I'm going to respond
That's
to
fine.
that. The first responders is one. The other one that there was an interest in was film. We're still looking into that, looking at what we are providing in our current high schools and what the capacity is for us to provide that, and whether there is a need to expand. The first responders is broad, which can include more around also the medical pathway. If we look at, you know, EMT services and that sort of thing. So we're still working with the community college. We're also, I believe, working, you know, we need to work with the Department of Workforce Solutions, look at their economic trends, what they're seeing before we really move forward. But I think the 2 that had originally been considered was, Linda, I think, was the film and the, was it safety? Criminal justice. But I think that there's more of an interest in broadening that to first responders.
Okay, and the reason I ask, and basically these are the same questions I asked, I don't know, the last CRC meeting. So the 2 major areas of job growth in the United States, regardless of anything that you read, it's healthcare and computer engineering. Okay, so the computer engineering piece, we've taken care of at the Santa Fe High School campus, and that's great. The healthcare piece we're taking care of in some way at Capitol, in a great way at Capitol, but we're not taking care of enough of it. And because of what I understand is we have a great need to have another medical pathway, and it can be at the early college school. It would fill up instantly, because we can't take more kids at Capitol. The program is maxed out. We can't take more kids to transfer to the school, and we don't have room in their medical program. And we know that their medical program is extremely successful by the number of kids that graduate with certifications and go on to medical school. I mean, it's just tremendous. And that's not to say, I mean, I want us to stay with construction trades. I want us to stay with welding. I want us to stay with auto collision. Absolutely. What did you say? It pays to get your hands dirty, right? Absolutely. But I would say that it would be irresponsible of us to spend any bond money and spend much time on going forward if it didn't include a medical pathway, the plans at ECO. And the second thing is, and I'm always a little bit hesitant on the film, and I say this about film and I also say this about culinary. And because there's this idea that, you know, you learn all this, there's not, you know, I mean, yeah, film is huge in New Mexico, but relative to the number of people that it employs and the number of people that want to be employed, those are two completely different things. And it's the same with culinary. I mean, everyone wants to open a restaurant, but you know what? Unless your dad's going to open a restaurant for you and has the cash, you're starting by cleaning vegetables and cleaning fish and doing all these things that are basically at $11 or $12 an hour. 11 if you're in Santa Fe, and that's because we have the minimum wage up here. So we're almost, I don't want us, the culinary aspect, like at the high school, would have to be tied, I think, to really have a lot of success, more success with hospitality and hotel restaurant management. But then the thing that concerns me on the film side, and you can look into it and you can talk to the union, the number of people that belong to the union versus the number of people that continuously work. And I know that, you know, Ms. Stoll and I talked about that, and somebody from IASI said 10% of us work regularly, really work regularly. This is our full-time job. We make enough a year that we can be electricians and grips and everything else. And it may come in 60 days here, 30 days here, 40 days here as projects come, but it's a career and these are the people that get called. That's 90% can't make a living or don't get regularly called to be electricians and best boys and everything else. So I would just, you know, I'd have us be careful about that in terms of setting up kids where there really aren't a lot of jobs. And I think it's, being in New Mexico, the film thing's really big here. No one was interested in culinary the way they are now until after we had the Food Channel. And, but really, kids come out of Johnson and Wales, and they come out of the Cordon Bleu, and they come out with $30,000 in debt, and they're cleaning vegetables at 11, 12 bucks an hour with a lot of debt. So I want us to be really careful about that. And I really think that it would be irresponsible of the board even to approve anything unless it had a health care component.
I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who came out from ECO. It's impressive what's going on there, and thank you, Ms. Yonda Wagner and Mr. Romero, for the presentation. But clearly, it's the people who are there who are always the heart and soul of the school, and that's what matters most, and that gives me a lot of hope for what we're doing there, and clearly you knocked the superintendent's socks off, so that means something. But thank you.
Another great presentation. I enjoyed when you presented at CRC. Just a couple of comments, and this came out of CRC, but because that's not televised or videoed, one of the comments from the members of CRC is, as we design a new campus, we definitely need involvement of the students and of the staff to help design those spaces rather than an architect saying, this is what you should do. The other thing, and just an aside, you know, I'm this old house junkie, and I would hope that maybe someday we could take our kids on a field trip to the American College of Building Arts in Charleston. That's an incredible facility, and they just had a segment on this old house as far as on welding, and these young men and women were, I mean, it was just fascinating. So there's a lot out there that our kids can go on and do, and I think Shadoni is still in operation. You know, I mean, they're doing a lot down there too. So hopefully we can, you know, show our students there are many opportunities out there, And I always say, my auto mechanic makes real good money off of my vehicles. So, you know, I mean, I know it's a good trade, and he's always telling us how hard it is to find people that, you know, will do that work. And we pay top dollar to have that done. So it's a good opportunity. I love the kids that came up and presented, and congratulations on all those awards that you got. That's impressive. And it is just as important as the athletic awards or the other academic awards that traditional academic awards. So thank you for really working hard, and I know you've stayed with the program with some ups and downs, and you know, we're committed to getting you a better facility, because I took a tour of that facility many years ago when when it first opened, and we need to value you too. And sometimes those facilities were less than what I would say would be what we want to see as a board. You deserve great working spaces, studying spaces, school spaces. So thank you. And you know, the other thing for construction management, we have I think he's still living in town, and I'll forget his name, but he was one of the first ones on this old house. They renovated an adobe here in Santa Fe. I can't remember which gentleman, but I'm sure that would be a good contact for us to reach out to, and you know, maybe have our students showcased on, because they're doing a building apprentice trade on that, and have Tom Silver and company, you know, showcase what Santa Fe's doing. Thanks.
Additional questions? So one more thing, two more things. We were at a Communities and Schools event last week, and attending that event was, I don't know if he's chairman of the board right now or if he's on the board. I know he's been on the board for a very long time. A gentleman who said, because I talked to him about the health component at Capitol and having a health component at Santa Fe High, and he said flat out, he didn't miss a breath, you have the health component, same thing at Santa Fe High that you have at Capitol, we'll fund it, period. It's done. We need healthcare workers. We need nurses. We need phlebotomists. We need nurses' aides. He just said flat out, we'll do it. So don't let money hold you up. So yes, we'll build the facility with the bond money, but operationally, the same way they're supporting it in a really big way over at Capitol, they'll do it at Santa Fe High. So that was really exciting when he said that. I just wanted, do you have your checkbook? So that was really great. And then I'll mention what I mentioned at the CRC meeting. And this is no disrespect intended to either Dr. Joel Boyd, Tammy, or Dana. I think ECO is the stupidest name ever. And I think we really need to take into account rebranding with a name, because even people today at the graduation referred to it as ECHO, okay? And I wish I had said something 2 years ago, but I just, I mean, everyone's first thought, and think of this for just a moment, yourself. If you didn't know what it was and someone said, hey, we have this program, or we have this facility, and it's the early college opportunity, high school, would or would your not first thought be that it's a college prep school? And so, and there's that element, and then who was sitting to my, oh no, it was Jody sitting to my right. I mean, and I believe this too. There's nothing wrong with the term VOTEC. I mean, in fact, should be an amazing amount of pride in vocational, technical education. It's where the work is. It's where people are being paid well to get their hands dirty. It's where people are building things, right? And so it's something that I want us to consider down the road. And whatever name we come up with, personally, I would like it to include VOTEC. But those are all bridges that we'll cross. But whenever I talk to people about ECO or whatever, they have no idea what it means, and their first thought is college prep. So anyway, those are my final thoughts. I really appreciate the presentation. We asked for this presentation because we did set aside $10 million in bond funds to build this facility. So the CRC and the board asked for, where are you? Where are you in this process? Because we need money for lots of stuff. And if you guys aren't moving on this, then we're going to reallocate funds. But so it was very, very refreshing. Was it last week, the CRC? It all blends together. And the CRC meeting and tonight to really hear of all of this great progress that's happening, because it keeps us energized is around this is happening. So this is very great. Thank you very much for another wonderful presentation. Superintendent, anything? Right. That means that the next item on the agenda, because we already did the action items, is board discussion and possible action. So since there are two people here that spoke at public forum, I think in a way we should address I would like to see that we address some of their concerns in board discussion, and y'all, whatever you want to do too. And then I have two items. What would be the pleasure of the board? So then do you have anything for board discussion? Okay. Do you have any comments based on what was said in public forum?
No, I don't. I mean, I'm listening. I appreciate the comments. There were some things that were brought up tonight that keep me thinking about things from new angles. And so I'm going to continue to think, and I know we're going to spend a lot of time on this on May 29th, but I appreciate everybody who came and showed up, and everyone who emails and talks to me, because it really does take a community, and it takes all of us sort of thinking about this together. So thank you.
I would just echo Board Member Noble's comments. Some valid points made tonight. I probably have on equity. I'm concerned about that, and I don't think I've said anything different. I may have a different solution than what you're seeing on equity, because I have a concern too where all of our small schools are, and I think I would prefer to address that when we talk about boundary changes, because for me, to have any school within Santa Fe that the school exists based on interzone transfers and not based on students within that zone, I think is a problem. So I think I've said it previously, whether we need to make the circles wider or longer, or, I mean, whatever we need to do, but that needs to happen. And if we go through with something like that, I will be advocating for that, because I think it is important that all of our students have the same opportunities. So.
Thank you. I would agree with both of you. The only thing I would add is, Maya, you've really given me more to think about relative to equity, and because of what you said about what Linda said, Trujillo. And it's a tough one. In terms of what Jim said, first student funding, I don't think enters into the challenge here. It's the SEG on small schools, the state equalization guarantee. And they're the ones that do the funding formula. And there was in today's paper, Fred Nathan had an editorial. He's the executive director of Think New Mexico around small schools and violence. You know, I think some of his arguments are a stretch on that particular one, because there are high schools in the country that have 5,000 kids that don't have a lot of violence, and no one's going there and shooting them up. So it's a hard, you know, yes, small schools can be more nurturing. We all know that. You can know everyone's name, exactly what Melissa spoke of, right? You were Anne's mom. Anne, right? Anna's mom. No, and we all want that. So that was relative to what Jim said, to what Mary said. The biggest challenge, I heard 3,000 units. I've never heard 6,000 units, ever, on the, was that?
It can go 3 to 6. People have wildly
I imagine
differing.
you go up, you can go to 12, but it's, yeah, okay.
The estimates have gone as high as 6, I believe.
Okay.
3 or 4 is more common.
Okay, great. The biggest challenge I have with that, and people have brought that up a lot in the last couple of weeks, is history of Santa Fe in making decisions and pulling the trigger. Rail yard, Catellus, okay, early 90s, 5 to 6 years to even get a plan to develop the rail yard. One presentations ad nauseum, one overlay after another. I mean, remember sitting through these, and then finally 5, 6 years later, you get some motion and things are happening in the rail yard. So for us, we have to make some decisions, and we don't have 6 years to do it. But the good thing is, I believe, that if they pulled the trigger and managed to do something on the more quick side, this isn't in stone. I mean, maybe the rebuild is, but you know, there's time. And if something happens and we have to say, whoa, the city just told us they're absolutely building 3,000 units of affordable condo apartments and everything else where there's going to be kids, absolutely we're going to relook at this, right? It would be irresponsible not to. And then the last point with Miguel Acosta in the first annual, I need to tell Miguel there's no such thing as first annual, it's inaugural. First annual does not exist in the English language. And then for Melissa, totally agree, but small schools, right? But I gotta go right back to what Maureen said, and that is we're just right now not funded that way. And maybe with a new governor that actually makes education a priority and not an afterthought, a place to sweep cash balances, you know, that may change. So those are just my thoughts on that, just to leave, and I'm seeing your hand go up right next. Yeah. And so Dr. Garcia, and then we're gonna. Yeah.
Just a couple of things that were mentioned that you didn't hit that I thought is important for the gentleman from EJ to know is that we can't do property taxes, and nor would we ever be able to change the law to allow property taxes to pay for operational. We're one of the few equalized states because we've got so many school districts that don't have the property taxes, and so that's a non-starter. That's not going anywhere. And there was one other thing that I forgot that that was brought up that we addressed. You know, the whole issue of funding. That's why the Santa Fe Public Schools is a plaintiff district in the sufficiency lawsuit, because our schools are underfunded, period, the end. However, that still will not address the issue around the buildings, because no matter, even if we do get a new governor that would put more money into operational, it would not help us for the capital outlay.
All righty. So I want to thank you very much, you all, for coming to the presentation. And so my items on board discussion were, and this because I go to sporting events and I talk to coaches and I just, I'm around town. Would you, Superintendent, not this minute, but ready for the next fall, parent code of conduct? The one thing I hear most from coaches, the successful ones, even to the ones that have teams that may not be as successful, and having coached youth soccer, parents are always the biggest problem, and they make coaching so hard. And I think we need to just, we just need to really, we have a student code of conduct, we have an athlete code of conduct, we have a drug policy for all of our athletes.
On that point, though, the way we were doing board discussion is you just bring it up to discuss next time.
Okay, then.
So it'll come back then.
Sure, we can discuss that next time. Parent code of conduct.
Okay.
Something that I'd like to see, and if other board members agree, added to the oncoming fall session. The other thing is exit interviews. It's my understanding from people that are leaving the district, and this has been 4 years, and now I'm just starting, I think, to get angry, that we don't have, this is what I'm hearing anyway, and on the next week you can tell me, you can show me what questions are asked, what is the percentage of people participating, what are not. Exit interviews. We've got to find out from people who are leaving what their thoughts are. So those are my two things. Yes, Ms. Cashman.
That just prompted me on, if it would please the board, obviously we had another shooting, and it's probably a little bit more near and dear to us because the first reaction is when you hear Santa Fe High School. Luckily, it was not here in New Mexico, but it was in Texas. I would like us just all to think about, before we leave for July, is there anything that when you think about security, that if something happened to our kids, you say, I wish we had? I think about this a lot. Do I feel comfortable leaving at the end of our board meetings for this current school year? Do we feel that we're in a good place? Or is there something that we would like to have the superintendent, maybe look into and come back to us? So I'd like that to be a board discussion for a future board meeting.
I just want to clarify, we are presenting to you on safety, I think it's the June 5th meeting, and we're bringing the recommendations from the safety committee, from all the forums, all the input. We've distilled it. But I want to clarify process, because if you remember what Tony had said, that you can't really get into discussion of the items, but you would bring them up, and then for the next board meeting, they would be on board discussion or possible action. So I'll put those three on since you brought them up, but safety will be presented June 5th.
I would suggest that safety be on with the safety presentation, because that seems a natural time to talk about what Vice President Cashman's brought up.
Ms. Cashman, are you good with that?
The only thing I'd say on that is I don't believe the issue is school safety. It's guns, 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 and how easy it is to get them. I think our schools are safe. I think that people in Santa Fe, Texas, their school was safe, but you had a guy. You know what I mean? It's you got to speak truth to power. And the problem is the NRA and everyone like them, and they're a crap organization that doesn't care about kids and communities. They only care about themselves and the sale and manufacture of firearms. That's all I have to say on that for tonight. Look at that. Advanced planning? Anything? Come to some graduations. They're really inspiring. And then to adjourn, motion, yes?
Motion to adjourn.
All right. Second, all in favor, yeah?
Aye.
Anyone want to stay for the rest of the night? Nay. All right, we're gone.